in the journey of life, a lot of people don't know where they are exactly relative to the rest of society. And a lot of people don't know where they're heading or where they're going. They just kind of go with the flow. But even when you know exactly where you are and exactly where you're heading, unless you have a guide that shows you how to navigate from point A to point B, you may still get stuck. You may still never get there. So a lot of people have hopes and dreams, but they may never get there because of what we call systemic poverty. Hi, everybody. My name is Rose Joshua. Welcome to Family and Finance. In my previous video, we started a series called Systemic Poverty. I interviewed John Davil, and we did an overview of systemic poverty. Today, I'm going to start a deep dive into elements of systemic poverty, essentially to help us to get an understanding of what issues we have to face and how to hopefully get out of it. Let's dive in. So I'm going to share my screen and basically start. The topic today is the foundation. When you want to build a house, you start from the foundation. So we're going to look at the foundational patterns of systemic poverty. Patterns are really important because that way you actually see the handwriting on the wall, you see where this is heading, you see the picture, and then you can, make plans to move yourself forward. So today is patterns. One of the reasons I spent a lot of time researching this topic and going out to find data, pulling data in to share with you is because not knowing is expensive. There's a very high cost of ignorance, and whether the ignorance is out of self-imposed laziness or just lack of information generally, it's still costly. Ignorance is expensive. So the objective for this series is to provide a lot of information for you so you can advise yourself and say, okay, what do I want and what am I going to do about it? Okay, so I'm here to work with you to move you from point A to point B. So let's equip you with a lot of information so we are not ignorant. So that way we're not burying our heads in the sand. We're not just going with the flow, not knowing. Okay. So let's start with the definition of systemic poverty. I like this one by Dr. Granderson. It says systemic poverty is a derivative of the way we have structured the economy, generally referred to the way in which market economic structures distribute income and how that distribution causes regular patterns of impoverishment. I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. So systemic poverty is a derivative, meaning it's the result of, it is a product of, it's something that happens because some other things were put in place. So it's a product, it's a derivative of the structure of economy. So structure means that, again, it's a deliberate structure. Like you want to build a house, you do the blueprint and you build according to the blueprint. So economic structure is designed. It doesn't happen by accident. It's designed by people. Okay. And it says those structures are imposed by those in power. So those in power may or may not be, it is government, but it's not only government. Those in power are those in authority, like employers, like, company owners, like, basically those that have authority over us would then impose the structure in order to maintain the system. All right. And that system distributes, deliberately allocates wealth or income in order to create what is called here regular patterns of impoverishment. Impoverishment is the process of making somebody poor. Impoverishment is actually a deliberate act of keeping or making someone poor. So I know it's a big word, but it has multiple meanings, but that is a meaning of impoverishment. So we need to look at systemic poverty as a design to keep people in certain positions to maintain the system so that those in power can be happy. That's one way to look at it. All right, so let's take a look at the patterns now. And as we look at the patterns, I'd like for you to ask yourself many, many times, where do I fit in here? And what am I going to do about it? And the other thing you want to know is about 80% of the people carry the economy mostly, okay? And that is what is called the labor force that's really laboring and working really hard in order to maintain that system, okay? So let's start with the distribution of employment income in Canada. See that word distribution again. So employment income in Canada, I'm going to take you to the source. So this data, this table is from Revenue Canada, not Revenue Canada, Statistics, Statistics Canada. So StatsCan has this database. And so this one, I'm going to actually do it from 2020, just so I see a smaller table. So it is distribution of income. And so it shows the 100,000 of income and over is 12.4% as of 2021. Lower than 5,000 is 12.9%, and all the numbers in between. So basically what we have here is translated into this table. And then there's another StatsCan table. This one here is called the High Income Tax Filers in Canada. And this was released November 2022. So it's very, very recent. But the data is as of 2020. So the top 1% is $253,900 and up. Top 5% is top 5% is what now? 132,300. So all of that data is then represented in this table. So if you look at this table, you see that the top 12.4% is 100,000 and up. Okay, top 1% is about $254,000 income, gross income before taxes and up. But then the other pattern you'll notice is that 50.5% of the working class, working population earns less than $40,000 per annum. Half, 50% earns less than $40,000. 67%, almost 70% earns $60,000 and below. So again, you ask yourself, where am I in this picture and what does it mean for me? If you chart that table, you get a mountain shaped graph where it starts at the bottom left and then curves around to the top right. Or if you, depending on which website you see that, it flips and it starts from the other end, right side, and curves to the left. So the first 4 bars are the top 20%, and the rest of the bars to your right are the bottom 80%. So that's the middle 40 and the bottom 40. Okay. And you notice that the middle 40 and the bottom 40 make the bulk of that graph. So you can line it up like that, like a line graph, or you can represent it as an area map. And this is what really shows the mountain shape. Again, where are you in this? And what do you need to do to move forward? So that distribution I just shared was income distribution. The next pattern, is wealth distribution. So income distribution is different from wealth. Net wealth is assets minus liabilities. You've heard me talk about this before. After you've paid all your bills, you've paid your mortgage, your house is free and clear, you've paid no car loan, no student loan, no loans, no credit card carried over, no line of credit, you've paid everything off. What remains is your net worth, your net wealth. So regardless of the income somebody makes, it is what you keep that really matters. So that's your net, all right? Now, this data is from the Parliamentary Budget Office of Canada. These are the people who create the Canada budget. So let me show you the source. So the Parliamentary Budget Office of Canada documents wealth information from time to time. And this particular document is from December of 2021. Okay, and it's called Estimating the top tail of the family wealth distribution in Canada. Top tail, top 1%, top 5% of wealth distribution in Canada. And the table I just showed you is from this book. So if I go to table 2-4, this is where that table is from. So let's spend a little bit of time on this table. The top 0.01% of Canada commands a net wealth of $153 million and above. And they control 5% of the economy. And that is in 1,600 families. So the population of Canada is 38 million, thereabouts. Of those 38 million, there's about 11 million families. So 1,600 families are the top 0.01%, and they are in wealth of $153 million and above. Okay. Top 1% net wealth is 7.3 million and above. They command 24% of the economy, and that's in approximately 162,000 families. So if you look at the top 1%, so they control 24.3% of the wealth. All right. So top 20 then, they have 1.2 and above. They control 72.6% of the wealth. So if you take that data and tabulate it, it's just tabulated here, just summarized in this table. So your top 5, and then top 1 is 7.3 and above, top 5 is 2.8 and above, top 10, 1.9 and above, top 20, 1.2 and above. Combined, the top 20 control 72.6, and the bottom 40 control 1.7% of the economy. Okay. The range limit, the wealth limit of the bottom 40 is less than $200,000. So what that means is most of the people I've talked to are in the bottom 40%. Okay. So they may have a house, but the house still has a huge mortgage on it. They may have a car, but the car still has a loan on it. They may have a job, but they're still paying student loans. So by the time you finish paying off the house, let's say something happened today, you have to pay off the house, pay off your student loan, pay off this. If you have less than $200,000, you're in the bottom 40%. Okay, so it's good to understand the picture so you know exactly what you're dealing with. Now, when you graph that, it doesn't really show clearly a pattern because the top 20 are in 4 bars. So what we want to do to get the pattern is to collapse the top 20. Instead of putting it in 4 rows, you collapse it into 1, and then the pattern evolves. Okay, so the pattern is a concave moon, concave shape that goes from the top left and curves all the way to the bottom. Or if it is flipped, then it goes from the top right and curves all the way to the left. So that's the pattern for net wealth. So the pattern, I'm going to go back. The pattern for net income is the wraparound mountain curve. And the pattern for net wealth is a concave moon. All right. So we can also look at net wealth in form of averages. So before we looked at the range, so 0 to 200,000 is the bottom 40, but then the average is a different way to look at it. So when you look at average income, that's the middle of the range. The upper class, the top 20, average is $3.18 million of net wealth. And upper middle class is 951K. Lower middle class is 428K. Bottom 40 is average $61,000. And they control 2.6% of the economy. So where this is coming from is also StatScan. Let's see. So StatScan, this is net worth, average dollars per household per quintile. So your quintiles are the 20. So you take 100% and divide it into 5. So there's a quint. So a quintile is a 20% block. So top 20% is the highest quintile. Next 20% are the, so you basically go quintiles. So the lowest and second quintiles are the lowest, the bottom 40%, right? Okay, so the other source of that data is also Statistics Canada. So this one is a report that talks about the distribution of wealth in Canada as of 2022, December 2022. This was published in March of 2023, so it's very, very, very current. So here, I just want to jump to where this sentence is. Most wealth is held by relatively few families, households in Canada. We already showed you that. The wealthiest households, top 20, accounted for more than 2/3, 67.9% of net worth, and the bottom 42.6%. So when you chart the averages, you still get the same pattern. So it's the same pattern when I chart it, same concave moon, highest on the top and lowest on the right. So you see the income and wealth gap between the wealthy, who are very wealthy, and the the bottom class, which is very, very poor, and the middle class, which is not up to half in wealth as the wealthy top 20%. So where do you fit in this? And let's come together, you and I, and let's put a plan in place to help you move yourself from one point to the next. Now, it doesn't really matter where you look, whether it's the USA or I looked around, I looked at the US, I looked at United Kingdom, I looked at different countries, and the pattern is the same. The pattern is the same. The numbers may not be exactly the same, but the distribution curve is like a bell curve in university. Sometimes the bell curve the grades. So the curve is the same, okay? So this is a sneak peek into the United States, where the top 10% controls just about 70% of the wealth. All right. So they gave up the 10% in the top, but then that 10% ripples to the bottom. So the bottom 50%. So shift. So the bottom is 50% and they control 2.5% of the economy. So in the US, if you look at it, the top 50% controls 97% of the economy. And the bottom 50% has to manage 2.5% of the economy. And literally the same thing in Canada. So if you look at it, in Canada, the bottom 50, well, ours is not, ours is bottom 40 and then top 60. But the top 60 controls 98% of the economy, and the bottom 40 controls 1.7. Guys, this is serious. The system is a very serious thing, okay? Very powerful. And so we need to figure out how to get out and escape from the grip. So anyway, so that's a pattern for you also in the US. So it literally, I want to show you, you can actually just go to Google and Google wealth distribution of Canada and look at images, and you'll see the patterns, right? So different pattern of pictures from different organizations, but they all look the same, literally. So this is a wealth distribution pattern here. This is an income distribution. It says wealth, but it's an income distribution pattern. This one here is from 1999 to 2012, wealth distribution again. Even though it says 1999 or 2012, you notice that year on year, the pattern is the same. There may be shifts in figures, but it's the same pattern, okay? So once you understand the pattern, this is wealth inequality in Canada, 2016. So now you have enough information to recognize these patterns. When you see them, you say, oh, Dr. Rose talked about this pattern. Now I understand what she's talking about. This one here is 2012, Canada, same pattern. All right, so you can basically Google that. So that's the end of this part. In the next part, we're going to now look at how systemic poverty is maintained. Because it is a system. How in the world is it maintained year on year, decade on decade, decade after decade, year after year? How is it maintained? And the question again you're going to be asking is, where am I in this picture? Where do I fit right now? And where do I want to go? And how do I get there? And my job is to work with you to put a plan in place to move you forward. Because if you don't have a plan, you fail. All right, and nobody wants to fail. So let's put a plan together. If you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe if you have not already. And please share with your friends and have them subscribe as well. And if you want to break free from systemic poverty, connect with me and let's help you put a plan in place, okay? So thank you so very much. Systemic poverty is the real thing, and it's something that we are hoping that with all this information coming out, we can help as many people as possible. Thanks. God bless you. Have yourself a beautiful day. Bye now.